Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're a frequent viewer of the channel, you know we post every single day, updates, everything you need, as always. And today we're going to take a look at a couple players that Joe Schoen, new general manager for the New York Giants, could look at and say maybe we should cut or trade these guys specifically this offseason. Of course, he just recently mentioned how much of a mess the salary cap is right now. And, you know, him coming from an analytical background, knowing what he's looking for in players, not overspending on outside guys, I would not be surprised if the Giants released or traded a couple of these high-profile names they currently have on the roster. But with that comes a lot of dead money. So there is, an argument to be made that maybe we shouldn't trade some guys based on their value and that the dead money is just too much to consume. But that's an argument that Anthony and I want to talk about for some of these players and what they might be able to do to lower their cap hits. But before we dive into the good stuff, my friend, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I'm excited for Joe Schoen to finally get to work. You know, when he came over to Buffalo with Brandon Beane in 2017, they had a really bad salary cap situation. Now, it's only been a few years. They're one of the most cap healthy teams in the NFL, so he knows a thing or two about this, right? He knows what it's like to be in a front office for a team that has really bad salary cap issues, and he knows how to fix it. And I think that's really important for the Giants. Now, of course, he mentioned there's going to be a lot of difficult decisions, right? They're going to have to make some heartbreaking decisions, have to release some players that they don't necessarily want to release. But at the end of the day, it's for the greater good. It's for the long-term outlook of the team. And that's what Joe Schoen is here to focus on, the long-term outlook of this team, make it competitive for the long run. So there's going to be some players that might be your favorite player on this team. Maybe you're one of your favorite players gets cut this offseason. It's going to suck, but it's got to be done.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So let's jump right into the first name on the list that I'm sure, Anthony, a lot of people are wondering about. James Bradberry, cornerback. This is an interesting situation. He's going to count $21.86 million against the salary cap next season. If the Giants were to cut him, they would save about $12 million. It would account for $9.7 million in dead money. So that's $12 million right there they could save. They just signed Adoree Jackson to a 3-year deal. I unfortunately kind of foresee James Badberry being a big candidate for being cut. Maybe they try and trade him away, but with a salary cap hit that big, I don't know who's going to want to consume that currently. So I think that he's definitely a really big candidate to be let go, Anthony. I guess $21.86 million. You save $12.1 million. Do you think that's enough to, justify, cutting James Bradberry this offseason, especially with Adoree Jackson and some young players on the roster?
Yeah, I mean, saving $12 million in salary cap space is pretty significant. As we've said before, the Giants right now, I believe, are in negative on the salary cap. So we're talking about the NFL draft, how excited we are for that. The Giants can't even have an NFL draft. They can't afford one. They don't even have the money for a draft class. But $12 million, that's still not even enough for a full draft class when you have 11 draft picks, right? Your first round pick, when it's number 5 overall, and then also the number 7 overall pick, that right there, those two players, I have to imagine, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's probably around $10 to $12 million for those two players right there on your salary cap. So the Giants have to make moves, and James Bradberry is one of my favorite players. I know frequent viewer of this channel, Michael, you're a huge James Bradberry fan, nicknamed him the blanket. Sorry, dude, but you might be losing the blanket. Your blanket might get snatched this offseason. It's really unfortunate, but as Alex mentioned, there is a lot of young, developing cornerback talent on this team. Now, Darnay Holmes, I think, is a great player. He suffered an injury, kind of held him back last year, but I think that he's good, and I think he's developing, could be a long-term starter. Adoree Jackson as well, suffered some injuries, but is a very good player. And even Aaron Robinson, I like Aaron Robinson a lot. I thought he got really active during the final stretch of the season, started the season with injuries, ended healthy, a little bit different than the other two guys that we just mentioned, but he showed some really great potential at times during this rookie season that he had. And I think that, with those three guys in mind, plus, you do have the draft upcoming. You can take a cornerback or two in the middle rounds. You might be able to build a secondary here in New York without James Bradberry and still be competitive.
Yeah, I mean, look, Bradbury allowed 8 touchdowns this past season. By most accounts, it was a big, big decrease compared to his 2020 campaign, in which he only allowed like 2 or 3 touchdowns. So if you're looking at what the Giants are probably going down, they could change their scheme entirely. James Bradberry is a great zone coverage corner, but he's not a good aggressive cover corner. So aggressive man coverage corner. So if you're looking at maybe going out and getting a Wink Martindale at DC, I don't think Bradberry would be a good scheme fit for him because they need aggressive man coverage corners who are fast and physical. Bradberry is a better zone guy. He's very, very smart with the way he plays the game, but he doesn't have the makeup speed like Adoree Jackson does to track down guys, especially faster guys in the deep secondary and if they're running go routes and whatnot on the boundary. So I think that's kind of where we could see a personnel difference and why the Giants may move on from him depending on what coach they hire. But of course, the money is an attractive factor as well. At $12.1 million, you are saving, so that I would keep an eye on for sure. But let's go on to the next player here, and that of course, I guess I want to say Leonard Williams. Will talk about him, but there's no way they can cut him, right? His cap hit's $27.3 million. They actually would lose $8.3 million just by cutting him this offseason. So the only thing they could do is try and trade him, but no one's going to take him on that kind of deal right now. So we can just ignore Leonard Williams altogether in terms of him being a guy that you could cut or trade. Here's a good one. Blake Martinez. Blake Martinez is set to earn $14 million this upcoming season, and he's coming off an ACL tear. So if the Giants were to cut him, they would save about $8.5 million, and he would count at $5.5 million in dead cap. Here's what I think they should do with Blake Martinez. I like Blake Martinez. I think he's a great run stopper. He's better in coverage than we anticipated, but he is coming off a significant injury. So I say you go to Blake and say this: hey man, we want to keep you here. We like you as a player, but you're coming off an ACL tear, and we have a new GM, and things are kind of going in a different direction. So the best we can do is either we will cut you and we will save the money and, we'll just eat the dead cap money, or we can restructure your contract. We'll tear it up. We'll offer you a new deal. You can stay here, and you can get what you were going to get anyway, probably elsewhere on another team, maybe even a little bit more. So maybe that's something they could do, keep him for 2 more years, let him battle it out with ACL rehabilitation and come back next year on a little bit cheaper of a price point and save the Giants some salary space. Anthony, what do you think about that prospective option for Blake Martinez and kind of not cutting him, but offering a restructured deal?
Yeah, I think that it's very realistic. In terms of the restructured deal, he's in the last year of his deal, so he technically can't be restructured. So what they would do is cut him, but already have an agreement in place to sign him right back. And that's something that they could consider. Now, of course, they have to agree to that, and Blake Martinez obviously needs to agree to that because he will be cut in that scenario and then signed right back. And of course, you just have to take the Giants' word that they're going to sign you back. Usually, there's some sort of contractual agreement beforehand or something, so they could do that, right? They could save $8 million, but it's the dead cap in there. They'd have to figure out a way to negotiate that dead cap in some way to where they can cut him, give him a new contract, and not have his dead cap hit the salary cap. So they could get creative. I don't know how creative they're willing to get for Blake Martinez, but they absolutely could get creative here. And I'll even mention there are some linebacker talents that might be first-round picks this year. We just did a mock draft, Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft breakdown, where he had Devin Lloyd going to the Giants with the 7th overall pick. The Giants were to make a move like that, you could see them trade or cut Blake Martinez in return and go with a new, younger linebacker in that position. Now, personally, I really hope to see Blake Martinez stay on this team, but $8 million, $8.5 million in cap savings, mighty tempting. Like I said, you can't even fit a draft class under the salary cap right now if you're the Giants. So they're going to have to make some difficult decisions. And Blake Martinez is definitely, I think he might be the most difficult decision because it's not like a clear cut, yes, they should cut him. And it's definitely not a clear cut, no, they shouldn't cut him. It's very interesting here. I want to support the guy, see him bounce back with this, ACL injury and get back to full form. But unfortunately, with the way the Giants salary cap is, he might just have to get back to full form on another team.
Yeah, and that's honestly, that's kind of the situation at hand, right? Looking at Blake Martinez, you save 8.5 million, right? It's 8.5 million is a pretty significant number, and pair that with James Bradberry's add 8.5 million to the 12.1 million. You got a little bit over 20 million to spend now. And currently, guys, I really don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but the Giants are negative 10 million in the cap right now. So by clearing 20 million, they'd only have 10 million left, which basically, and this is even more annoying, thanks Gettleman for your absolute ineptitude and whatever the hell you thought you were doing. But that 10 million is just enough to sign our draft picks. So by cutting Blake Martinez, cutting James Bradberry, 2 of our best players on the defensive side, you now have the money to spend to sign your draft picks. That's it. That's all you get. So let's keep going down the list and find a couple other guys that will likely be cut. Sterling Shepard will count 12.5 million against the cap next year. He just tore his Achilles. He'll probably miss the majority of next season. And if the Giants were to cut him, they'd only save 4.5 million. He would count 7.8 million against the dead cap, but there's no way we're going to be able to retain him. So I feel like maybe at this point it's better off to just cut him. But if they cut him post June 1st, they could save 8.5 million on his contract, and he would only count 4 million in dead cap. But the thing is, that money will likely, you have 8.5 million extra, but you can't really spend that on let's say free agent signings and let there's some extra guys left over. But I think that probably with Sterling Shepard, that's double the amount if you wait until post June 1st. So I would expect Sterling Shepard to be a post June 1st cut, save $8.5 million, and go and get your depth pieces. Like we got Logan Ryan late in the offseason. Offensive line depth, like those guys, there's always guys on the roster, on the bend. There's always guys kind of waiting to see what the best deal is on the market. So get that money and then go invest in some offensive line pieces or another position, maybe another receiver who's waiting out to get a better deal. So that's always an option. I would think. Anthony, do you think Sterling Shepard is definitely on his way out? Because I think we can kind of almost guarantee it at this point.
I feel like when they drafted Kadarius Toney, it was almost a nail in the coffin for Sterling Shepard, right? Like now that they have a potentially elite slot receiver, right? That's what we think Kadarius Toney can be. Not saying he will be, but he can be a potentially elite slot receiver. And I think long term, as long as he can stay healthy, which has also always been a problem for Sterling Shepard, staying healthy. If Kadarius Toney can be healthy and play in the slot, he could be a better player than Sterling Shepard ever was in some ways, because he just has certain physical traits and abilities that Shepard and most players in the NFL just don't possess. Like Kadarius Toney's built different. Like he has a lot of just athletic traits that nobody shares with him, right? He is a truly special talent. So I think that the Giants are probably going to go forward with him as one of the starting receivers, and I think at this point they're probably comfortable moving on from Sterling Shepard. But one of the things about Shepard is I don't think they need to cut him. I think that he is a player that will have a trade market. I think that teams will be interested in trading for Sterling Shepard. He's still a good player when he's on the field. Just getting on the field has been difficult for him. So I could see one of those teams, one of those really good teams that just need one receiver to push them over the top. I could see somebody taking a chance on Sterling Shepard. He's a veteran, would be a low-cost deal probably. They'd have to restructure his contract or, he gets traded with a new deal in place, whatever it might be. But I could see something like that happening for Sterling Shepard. And honestly, I hope something like that happens because the Giants could get a draft pick out of that, and Sterling Shepard can get put into a really good situation where he can succeed. Still a big Shep fan, and I do want to see him have a successful career.
I don't know if you remember, he did tear his AC. He did tear his Achilles, so that definitely
He
would
did.
be
He
a
did.
big no-no.
But I want him to bounce back at some
Oh
point.
no,
And
for sure.
I could see a team sending some low conditional draft pick to try and get him.
I could see it. I mean, at the same time, they could sign him for pennies on the dollar, instead of sending draft picks, because let the Giants cut him and we'll just scoop him up for like a minimum deal. Coming off an ACL tear, he's not going to get big money, that's for sure. He's going to have
Maybe
to
I'm
be
being generous. Maybe I'm just too much of a Shep fan. I want to see
No, I
him
love Shep. Don't get
succeed.
me wrong. I love Shep. He has the potential to be a great receiver. He just, like you said, he can never stay healthy. It was a non-contact injury. This happens all the time. Most of his injuries are non-contact, for the record. It sucks that this has been his career up to this point. But yeah, maybe he'll go to another team. Maybe he'll be good for another team, but he's going to be rehabilitating for most of next season anyway. So, look at Lorenzo Carter. It took him a full year to turn that thing around and really show that he got over the ACL tear or the Achilles tear he suffered early last year. So kind of an interesting situation, but I do think that they will cut Sterling Shepard post June 1st and save the $8.5 million. One guy who is pretty much guaranteed to be cut is Kyle Rudolph, one of the biggest disappointments of this season in terms of free agent signings. He would count $7.4 million in dead cap next year. Or rather just in cap space if they were to retain him. But if they cut him, they would save $4.5 million and consume, $5 million. They would consume $2.4 million in dead cap. So it kind of like you look at it and you say, obviously, Kyle Rudolph is an option to be cut here. Damn, that's a hell of a horn. Do you hear that? Oh
I
my
do hear that.
goodness. Obviously,
What it's like to be in New York City.
somebody wants to cut Kyle Rudolph badly. Oh my God. Definitely a Giants fan honking out there, but yeah, Kyle Rudolph, Anthony, if you think that they should keep him, I don't know what happened to your brain. It might be scrambled, but I imagine he's probably gone.
Yeah, I would imagine he's probably gone as well. He did not live up to his contract. And honestly, maybe not to any fault of his own. There was a lot of injuries around him. The offensive scheme sucked. We all know that. Jason Garrett was terrible at using his players. And of course, injuries. Injuries really took a toll on Kyle Rudolph this year. I feel like if he was healthy, and honestly, towards the end of the year when he was healthy, he started to play a lot better. He had that long 50-plus yard reception, which was the longest of his career, go figure. But he had some moments where he looked like a good player, but he was just held back by everything. And at this point, he's not playing up to his contract. So even if he does have good moments, and he is playing good at times, he's not playing good enough to justify how much the Giants are paying him. So yes, unfortunately, I believe that the Giants will be cutting Kyle Rudolph this offseason.
Yeah, and look, there's two more players that I want to talk about. One of them we can't cut, and the other one we definitely will be cutting. So the first one is Logan Ryan. Logan Ryan cannot be cut. He is going to make 12.25 million next year when he's retained, and his dead cap hit is 11.45 million. The Giants would save 775K. And if they cut him post June 1st, it wouldn't be much of a difference either. So Logan Ryan, unless traded, there's no way that we're getting rid of him, unfortunately. Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think monetarily it works out. I think they have to stick with Logan Ryan for better or for worse. I think Logan Ryan is a good player, has his good moments. He's not great. He's not elite. You could probably argue he's not worth the contract that he's been given, but Dave Gettleman gave him that contract. That's what he has. And yes, for lack of a better term, he is stuck with us. We're stuck with him. But again, I don't think that's necessarily a burden. He is a great leader and a good, solid veteran on the back end of the Giants defense. And so I'm not too upset over the fact that we can't cut him. I don't want to cut all these players and just, have these players get their lives turned upside down. I like Logan Ryan. I want to see him succeed here. So I guess I'm happy that he's going to be sticking around, although I wish that contract was a little bit more flexible just so that the Giants had more options.
Yep, that's true. And honestly, I could see them trying to trade Logan Ryan. His deal's not terrible. A team that's in need of a leadership oriented safety could go and say, there's value there, but I highly doubt it. 12.2 million is a lot of money for a guy who you can easily replicate with a youngster. I do love his passion. I do love his leadership. I do love that he curates fumbles and that he's a leader on the field and off the field. So I do think there's value, especially with a new head coach coming in, to maintain some of that cultural stuff. But altogether, I think it's going to be a full reboot anyway in terms of, trying to reset the cap and the draft selection. So I don't think he's going to serve much of a purpose except for, just keeping the locker room together, even though the team might be kind of bad next year again. The one guy who's definitely being cut is punter Riley Dixon. Riley Dixon is projected to earn $3.1 million next season, and I don't know how on earth he justified that contract, but he would count 320K in dead cap, and the Giants would save $2.8 million by cutting him. They will absolutely be cutting Riley Dixon. He is making way too much for a punter, and for a punter that sucks to begin with. So I don't know what they saw. He's not Johnny Hecker. He's not anybody that's worth that much money. So Anthony, Riley Dixon, pretty much a guaranteed goner, I'd say, right?
I'd say so as well. I think that Riley Dixon has really had such a disappointing season. One of the most disappointing seasons out of any Giants player this past year, and that says a lot because there was a lot of disappointing seasons turned in by Giants players, and I think that Riley Dixon, really just played his way off of this team. I feel like once Joe Schoen and his scouting department get in there and they start evaluating the roster that they have, they're probably going to see a major deficiency at the punter position. And you know what? He's getting paid too much to play that way, right? Like he is playing just not even close to his contract. So for the Giants, I would assume they're going to cut Riley Dixon, and then they're going to find somebody in free agency to replace him at the punter position.
Absolutely. So those are the primary guys that I believe will be cut or traded. Of course, there's a Saquon Barclay, and I don't think he will be cut or traded. You really can only trade him. I think Joe Schoen already indicated that. He kind of said, if you want Saquon Barclay to be able to do good things and create big runs, you have to have an offensive line that blocks. So he's kind of indicating that he plans to have Saquon Barclay around for next season. And then you have guys like Daniel Jones, and I think they're going to keep him. It seems like everyone's under the general consensus that he will be the starting quarterback in 2023. So I think we can kind of firmly supplant those guys as retentions. Devonte Booker is an honorable mention. They would save $2.1 million if they retained him, or rather if they cut him. So that's an option. They did elevate a Bills running back to they signed him to a futures deal this week. So Joe Schoen brought over one of his Buffalo guys. Antonio Brown, or rather Antonio Williams, my bad. We actually are going to be interviewing Antonio Williams probably next week, so we'll get some good insight on Brian Dable and Joe Schoen and what type of guys they are, and the culture that the Bills have curated over there, and what Antonio Williams is bringing to the New York Giants. So that should be really, really fun. I'm excited to take a look at what kind of the Buffalo culture is and really what behind the scenes looks like over there. So that should be a really great time, guys. But let us know what you think about these players. Is there anyone on your mind you think that they should keep or let go or trade? There's a lot of money to be saved by trading some of these guys, but the Giants are in a tough spot. Shane said it. This is a mess. They have to clean up. It's going to take a year for them to get into the right spot. They have $93.4 million opening up next season. So that's a really good thing. If they trade some of these guys, it would be even more. Because Sterling Shepard would count $13.5 million next year. There's some guys that would just count a tremendous amount. And then, of course, you have like Logan Ryan would count $12.2 million, but then they would save $9.2 million. They're going to trade a lot of these guys. The Giants are going to have about $110 million to spend next year. And if the cap increases even more, they could be looking at $120, $130 million if they don't spend like lucratively in free agency this year, which is pretty much impossible. So next year, that's really when the rebuilds kind of starts, if it makes sense, right? This year, they're going to be cleaning out the counters, like cleaning out the shelves, taking out the trash, getting rid of the bad contracts, getting rid of the rats and moles, and turning over the coaching staff. But next year, a little bit of continuity. They have stuff in place, reboot with the youth, and you're looking at a totally different situation. So I think that this year is going to be kind of a gimme. But next year, we're going to be looking more so at the money aspect and where they can spend to get good players. And not just big names, but the guys that can make an impact in small, detailed roles. The Giants overspent on big names so much, and while it was awesome and exciting during the time, it didn't lead to anything. So we want coaches that can really make average players look above average. That's really what we're looking for here. It's all about coaching at the end of the day, my friends. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure to like and subscribe. Everybody expects the Giants to make a decision on the head coach position tomorrow, so we'll have that out for you as soon as possible. Don't worry. We'll have that content ready and prepared. Make sure to have a phenomenal weekend. It's going to be snowing like crazy in New York, so stay safe out there on the roads. Make sure to wear those boots and stuff. But hopefully you guys have a good one, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.